Africa's 100 Brightest Young Minds in 2015. She was named a Global Changemaker and awarded the South African Green Student of the Year Award in 2016, and was named a Young Leader for Development by the European Commission in 2017. She is a good friend of mine, a friend I've known for a few years. I hope you were excited to hear her speak. I think she has a couple really good points, things to take away from this, and we good? Perfect. And without further ado, my friend Courtney.
All right, can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. Is there anyone outside that needs to still come inside or would like to still come inside? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, perfect. So I just firstly wanted to say thank you so much for having me here, and thank you to the choir for the South African welcome. I felt so at home. Sorry, we're having some tech difficulties, but we'll sort it out. Okay. So thank you so much again for having me. It's truly been incredible to be here, and especially to meet some of you today. It really makes the 27-hour flight from South Africa to get here worth it. 9 months ago, I was sitting in an auditorium at a different conference, and I was waiting for a session to start. And while I was waiting, I was preparing a different speech. I was preparing to give a speech on renewable energy in Africa in front of 500 people from across the world at the world's largest summit on development. I was sitting in the second row, going over my notes and making my final changes, when everyone in my row suddenly stood up. And I remember thinking, great, they're probably going to kick us out to make space for the VIPs. So I clicked save on my laptop and I started sluggishly packing my things away when all of a sudden a hand was stretched out to me in greeting. So I kind of awkwardly held my laptop in one hand, my bag in the other, and I shook the hand of the Queen of Belgium. Today, I would like to take you over the journey that led me to the moment that I met the Queen of Belgium and the opportunity to speak at the world's largest summit on development at the age of 22. I'd also like to share with you some of the most important lessons that I've learned over my journey as an activist, trying my best to save the world. Okay. The best place to start, as they say, is at the very beginning. I was born in 1995 in South Africa, 1 year after the end of apartheid and the first democratic elections in South Africa, when Nelson Mandela was elected our first black president. It was a time of great hope and optimism in South Africa, and they called our generation the born-free generation. As a born-free, I grew up in South Africa that fought injustice from the top down, the ground up, the inside out, and in the minds of our citizens. In school, we learned about our dark history, and we celebrated the struggle heroes who fought for this change in South Africa every day. I grew up in a home with parents who taught me the value of love, empathy, and kindness, and that the most important thing about a person is who they are, not what they are as defined by social constructs. Parents who taught me how to be brave and taught me how to stand up for what I believe in, even when it is incredibly hard. Growing up in this way molded me into someone that takes injustice personally. I grew up on a farm in a small town in one of the most beautiful parts of South Africa. And although it's an upbringing I would not trade for the world, it was a really sheltered one. It was not until I attended university in our capital city that I experienced the realities of injustice for the first time. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, transphobia, gender inequality, I was bombarded by it all daily. And I was studying towards a degree in environmental science. And so in class, I was learning about environmental injustice and the linkages between environmental and social justice. I frantically started joining campus organizations and volunteering wherever I could. And I guess you could say this is how it all began. The first important lesson that I learned was through an experience starting an organization called Greenline. As a naive 19-year-old, I decided that I was going to end man-made climate change once and for all. Me, I was going to do it. And as an environmental science student, I figured that if people at least knew about the problem, if they could see the science, they would immediately change their ways and I would save the world. Like I said, I was naive at 19. I figured I would be done by the time I graduated and I would continue living a normal life. So along with my two best friends, we established Greenline as a campus student organization, and we set to work trying to educate people about climate change. We adopted the strategy of trying to make climate change relatable to everyone and relatable and tangible to all the disciplines on our campus, to include everyone in the conversation, not just the hippies, as they were known back in those days, all of 4 years ago. And we soon realized that perhaps it would take us more than a few years to change the world, but we persevered nonetheless. We engaged over 200 volunteers in our community projects, and we negotiated with our university to start a campus-wide recycling program that served the 60,000 students at my college. The first important lesson that I learned was that you do not need to have the answers to start working on the problem. Nor do you need extensive expertise, experience, resources, time, and especially money. We ran Greenline on the equivalent of $20 for 2 years. We had no idea what we were doing. We were by no means experts, and we all had fully packed schedules. We were able to learn through experience, and we used our mistakes and failures to improve what we were doing. This lesson has proved true in many other experiences in my life and can be summed up by something my favorite poet says: if you ever want to do something, just leap and hope that you grow wings on the way down. After a year in operation, I was fed up. It was so slow trying to change the world. And so I figured I would need to do something big. If I was going to change the world, I needed to go right to the top. So I started knocking on doors at the South African Department of Environmental Affairs, and door after door after door was shut in my face. The doors that I did get into, I was laughed out of for being too young. They told me to grow up because I didn't know what I was talking about. But as they say, when one door closes, or in my case, when many doors are slammed in your face, a window opens. And I was able to connect with the United Nations Environmental Programme in South Africa. It was through that connection that I became the South African youth representative to the climate change negotiations in 2015. Determined to change the world, I put my name forward and was selected as one of 8 young people to draft the youth resolution on climate change, which was used by world leaders in those negotiations. This experience brought me the second most important lesson that I've learned. If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. And I'd like to add to this by saying that your age can never stop or hinder you from following your dreams. It might just mean that you have a longer journey to reach them, but it can never stop you. Never could I have imagined, as a girl growing up in a small farming community, that I would get to represent youth on a global stage. Never could I have imagined that I would be here with you, getting to share a part of my story. If your dreams are not big enough, if your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. Through my work with Greenline, I was invited to join an organization called Global Changemakers. And through this network, I was able to meet incredible young people from around the world working on all manner of social and environmental issues. Incredible people who did not let their age or the fear of their dreams stop them from pursuing them. And so today, I would like to share with you some of their stories, not only to illustrate the power of youth, but also to celebrate the courage that they had to go after their dreams to change the world. First is my friend Montaro from Mexico, who was a victim of bullying in middle school. At 16, his dream was to eliminate bullying from all schools across Mexico. And he started with one workshop at his school. He then held other workshops at local schools. And over the last 5 years, he has reached 80 public schools, 4,500 teachers, and 100,000 students in Mexico. Montaro is now 22 years old. Next is my friend Shah from Bangladesh, who at 17 formed the Footsteps Foundation with the dream of ensuring that everyone, no matter what their income level, had access to clean water and sanitation, and the dignity that meeting these basic needs provides. He is now 22, and over the last 5 years has provided access to over 1 million gallons of clean drinking water in the slums of Dhaka, Bangladesh. His foundation has now entered a new phase where they are creating storm-resilient sanitation facilities in vulnerable coastal communities in Bangladesh, which serve 200 families and with plans to serve 500 more in the near future. At the age of 15, my friend Mark went on a school trip to the rural areas of the Philippines, where they encountered communities that had never before had access to electricity. Along with 2 of his friends, they had a dream where children and students just like them could have light to do their homework at night. And so they made a plan to fundraise to raise enough money to light one village that they'd visited. And through that initiative, they were able to partner with a US-based company and form an organization called 1 Million Lights Philippines. Today, 7 years later, they have provided lights to 13,000 families in the Philippines, affecting 60,000 people in 60 communities. My friend Ellen is from one of the poorest countries in Africa and one of the countries with the highest rates of gender inequality in the world. Her dream was a country where women could have equal access to education and could have the opportunity to earn a livelihood for both themselves and their families, all while growing the economy of Malawi. Quite the dream for a teenager, right? At 18, she started a company that hired and trained uneducated adult women to sew, and they created products such as tapestries and other goods to raise money in order to build a center where they could train entrepreneurs and provide them with interest-free microloans. Today, her company, Gehle, has supported 40 women-led businesses with microloans. Their products have grown to the extent where they can ship them all over the world, and do, and they were able to build an education center to continue their training programs. She has also recently started a scholarship fund for promising female students in Malawi. Last year, Ellen was awarded Glamour magazine's College Student of the Year and was named one of Forbes' 30 under 30 most promising entrepreneurs in Africa. Ellen is 23. Lastly, my friend, Texas-born Maria Myers, watched a documentary in class when she was a sophomore in high school on the devastating condition of obstetric fistula. Obstetric fistula is a complication of childbirth that occurs in many developing countries due to inadequate access to healthcare. They were so devastated by watching this documentary that her and her sister decided that they were going to raise enough money for one corrective surgery for a young mother on my continent. Today, they formed a US-based charity called Pretty Purposeful and have raised enough money for 70 corrective surgeries for young mothers. Not only that, they have been able to renovate a clinic in Sierra Leone that can provide 300 such corrective surgeries a year. Both her and her sister have traveled to clinics across the continent, meeting the people that they've benefited, and both have spoken at the United Nations General Assembly. Maria is 19 years old. Don't let anyone tell you that your age, that you are too young, that you are too old, that you are too anything to follow your dreams. And don't let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big or not valid. These stories are of just 5 global changemakers in a network of over 1,000 young people taking small steps to live out their dreams every day. What is your dream? And what small step can you take? My dream is to play a role in creating a world that is better than the one I was born into. A world that is more fair, equal, and just, where everyone can thrive no matter where they were born or who they are or what they are. My experience with Global Changemakers, meeting these incredible people and participating in the skills development workshops, inspired the next step in my journey, and I founded an organization called the Better Tomorrow Movement. The Better Tomorrow Movement, or TBTM for short, was founded on the idea that I wanted to make it easier for young people around the world to act on the social and environmental issues that they experience in their communities. I wanted to inspire them by sharing the stories of other young people who, through small steps and humble beginnings, were able to create real change. I wanted to support them through this process, and I wanted to help develop their skills and enhance their capacities to take on these global challenges. I also wanted to connect young people from around the world and unite them on common dreams and common goals, as this increasing negative focus in the media on our differences divide us. I had more or less no idea what I was doing, but I just leapt and hoped that I grew wings on the way down. I developed TBTM into an online platform to make it accessible anywhere in the world. And through this website, I was able to share these stories and share articles on skills such as project management, fundraising, and leadership, which are very often neglected in school systems across the world. I was also able to set up an international peer mentorship program so that people could support each other and learn from each other's best practices and experiences on how to take on these challenges. In the first couple of months, despite me having spent every possible second on TBTM, I had had limited success, reaching maybe a dozen people across the world. This was the first program that I had conceived of and created solely on my own, and I was extremely protective of it. I was arrogant enough to think that no one could do what needed to be done as well as I could. And the next lesson I learned was how to eat some humble pie. Because TBTM was failing due to my belief that I could do it alone. The most important lesson that I learned through this experience is that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, nor is it admitting defeat or failure. Not asking or allowing people to help was my failure. Within 6 months of allowing people to join the team, we expanded enormously. And in the last 18 months, we've been able to add 2 new programs to our offering. We set up a Global Ambassadors program to allow young people from around the world experience working in a diverse and multicultural team, as well as to experience working virtually, which is an increasingly important skill in our world today. We also work on developing their digital advocacy and campaigning skills. The second program is a Good Human series, which is a community talk series aimed at making international issues relatable in a local context and helping communities see how they can work on these issues locally. I'm very proud to say that our team is currently finishing the intake of volunteers, mentors, and global ambassadors for 2018, and we are expanding our program to 5 other countries in the world. Over the last year and a half, we have been able to work with 50 incredible volunteers from around the world in 40 countries, and we have been able to directly impact 400 young people through our programs. It was for this work that we were announced as a runner-up for the Queen's Young Leader Award in 2018. So I think I've done enough talking for now. I'm going to show you a video so someone else can explain to you what the Queen's Young Leaders Award is. Are the screens on? No? Okay, let's see if this works. Are the screens on? Can anyone see them? Okay, we're having technology difficulties, so they should come up in a second. There we go. Okay, perfect. Here we go.
I would like to congratulate the winners of the Queen's Young Leaders Award for 2018. This award recognises the enormous effort and courage of these inspiring young people who are tackling some of the Commonwealth's most pressing challenges and inspiring others to realise their full potential. Back in 2014, my brother and I helped to launch the Queen's Young Leaders Award on behalf of Her Majesty. The programme is now in its 4th and final year, and I've had the privilege of meeting many of the previous winners, both here in London and in their home countries across the Commonwealth. What has always struck me about these young people is their humble but passionate determination to make life better for their communities. They really are transforming the lives of those around them, and in some cases, far beyond that. This year's Queen's Young Leaders are dedicating their lives to the benefit of others in so many different ways. From encouraging people to talk about mental health in Nigeria, to finding innovative ways to tackle pollution in Malaysia. If more of us follow their example, we can make our communities, countries, and the Commonwealth a better place. To all the winners, you've done your countries proud, and I know you'll do us all proud for many years to come. Embrace this opportunity ahead of you and enjoy it. You really are changing lives. So good luck and congratulations.
The growth that the Better Tomorrow movement has had reinforces the lessons that I've learned over my journey. That you don't need to have all the answers to start working on the problem. Learn through doing. And it's not a failure to ask for help. But most importantly, if your dreams don't scare you, they are not big enough. My journey entered a new phase towards the end of last year when I accepted a position with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and started working on the team that implements the Global Cleantech Innovation Program in South Africa, a business accelerator for cleantech startups in the fields such as renewable energy, water efficiency, that sort of thing. It was through my work with UNIDO and through this program and my continued activism for the environment that I was selected as one of 16 young leaders for development by the European Commission. As one of the young leaders, I was invited to represent the perspective of women and youth in Africa on the implementation of renewable energy on our continent. And through this opportunity, I was incredibly honored to meet with world leaders such as the Prime Minister of Norway, to share a stage with the President of Guinea, and to have an audience with Her Majesty, the Queen of Belgium. While working, I was also completing my first year of postgrad full-time. I was running the Better Tomorrow movement, overseeing Greenline, volunteering for Global Changemakers, and coming to terms with my mother's diagnosis with terminal cancer. I was running on very little sleep. I was not eating very well. I was not looking after myself, and unsurprisingly, I crashed. I entered a bout of the worst depression and burnout that I have ever experienced. And I learned the hard way, one of the most important lessons that any activist, social justice warrior, social entrepreneur, campaigner, or volunteer can learn. You cannot feed the world if you yourself are starving. Or put another way, as in an airplane safety demonstration, in case of an emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first before assisting others, because you cannot help others if you cannot breathe. Creating lasting and meaningful change in any sphere is not easy, especially when it comes to changing the status quo and creating social justice. At the naive age of 19, I thought that I would have saved the world by the time I graduated. I now realize that I'm going to have to dedicate my life to creating change, and that it is likely I will not even see the impact of my efforts in my lifetime. This journey is a marathon and not a sprint. I sometimes cheekily say that trying to change the world is like breaking down a brick wall with your face. Eventually, you'll break down the wall, but it will be at great personal cost to yourself. I often follow this line, however, with the quote, "If not me, who? If not now, when?" And I realize that fighting for change is a privilege in and of itself, as odd as that may sound. I have the privilege of the time, energy, and resources to fight for social change, where others may be working 3 jobs to put food on the table, may live in a culture where speaking out against injustice can see you violently punished, where choosing to be who you are has the threat of being disowned by your family. I recognize my privilege in having the freedom to do what I do, and although I'm not nearly arrogant enough to think that I can speak for the sufferers of injustice, I can be an ally, and I can raise my voice and shout for those who have been silenced. I take injustice personally, And so now I wear a helmet reinforced with self-care and a work-life balance, and I continue to break down the wall that is trying to make change. The last thing that I'd like to share with you is not a lesson, but rather a realization. A realization that has been hard fought over the last 4 years of triumphs, successes, failures, mistakes, hurts. It is a realization that is much more eloquently worded in one of my favorite poems, but I have dropped the piece of paper, so if you bear with me, I'm just going to pick it up quickly. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to trace the author of this poem, or the poet rather, but here I'd like to share with you, I Wanted to Change the World by Anonymous. When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, and so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realize that if a long time ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world. Thank you. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but I'd be more than happy to answer any if you have them. Are there questions? Okay, so I think that just to repeat the question was, how do we encourage young people to change in their communities? How do we get them to start? How can they start? What resources can they go to? Over my journey, people always ask me, oh, I want to start this, but I don't have that, but I don't have that. I am the biggest proponent of just start. If you don't have money, you don't have time, you don't have resources, you don't have the expertise, just do it. Just leap and hope that you grow wings on the way down, as my favorite poet says. Literally, the simplest of things can make an incredible difference. And by starting small and expanding that way, you can really create incredible change. I'll use my friend Montaro from Mexico as an example. He did one workshop at his school, and through that, the opportunities presented itself to start expanding to other schools. And now 6 years later, he's reached 100,000 school kids. So I think just starting is a really good thing, putting it out into the universe that you're going to make the change, and you'll be surprised what opportunities come your way from that. But I don't think you should ever let it stop you, that you don't have enough time or resources. However, in terms of resources, there are some fantastic resources available online. I know Global Changemakers, for one, has a couple of handbooks that people can use to implement projects and things like that. Yeah, so I think, does that answer your question? Okay, perfect.
I now have a microphone, so somebody wants to ask a question. All right.
Did your professors help you, or did they get in your way when you had these terrific startup projects at such an early age? That's question one. And then I'm just curious if you helped out with the Cape Town water situation. Those are the two. I'm interested in both. Thank you.
All right, so the question on my professors, I was very lucky. I was part of a small department, and we were all very much like a family. And so they were very supportive of what I was doing. They allowed me to reschedule exams if I was traveling or doing all sorts of things. They really gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of support, and for that I will always be grateful. In fact, when I went to COP21, I walked into the head of our department's office, never having met him before in my life, and said, "You need to pay for me to go to Paris." And he was kind of like, and once he got to know me a bit better and my experience and my reasoning, he was like, okay. And I was actually the youngest person to ever have been funded for an international conference at my university. Yeah, he was really supportive in that sense. In terms of the Cape Town water crisis, I haven't been involved in that. I live sort of on the opposite side of the country, but I do have a lot of family members who live in Cape Town who are experiencing the difficulties there. For those of you who don't know, Cape Town is in line to be the first major city to run out of water in the world, and they are a couple of weeks away from day zero. But what's fortunate is that Cape Town gets winter rain, and we're heading into the winter season now in the southern hemisphere, so hopefully we will get some winter rain in Cape Town. Do you want to just say it?
Who lives in Wyoming and who's like 16, how are you able to like do something internationally and help with that is what I'm wondering.
Okay, so if I get straight, your question is how living here in Wyoming are you able to contribute globally? Is that the question?
Yes.
And get involved globally? I'm very much a fan of the saying, think global but act local. And so try and work on these global challenges in a local context and see how you can support them that way. But there are a lot of organizations that you can get involved with through volunteering across the world that work internationally, and you can get involved that way. There are a lot of campaigns that you can become a part of. Digital advocacy is becoming very popular amongst young people these days due to how easy it is and how accessible it is for people around the world. And I think just do it. There's also a couple of websites for young people, if any of you are interested, called Opportunities Desk and Youth Opportunities that constantly post incredible opportunities for young people to get involved globally.
Cool. Anybody else? I have a question. How old are you, Courtney?
I'm 23. You're never too young to follow your dreams. There's one behind you, Christy.
This is loud. Sorry.
No.
How old were you when you first decided that you were going to change something?
So I was 18. I was my first year at university. Growing up in my town, I thought that everything was perfect. Everyone was like more or less middle class. I went to a private school on scholarship, so I had such a sheltered childhood. But yeah, so when I got to university and I was faced with the realities of injustice at all levels, it was when I decided that I needed to do something. And I think I greatly attribute that to my upbringing, especially growing up in South Africa and the lack of tolerance that we have for injustice after the apartheid.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
All right.
All right. I guess that's about it.
I will be here for the rest of the conference if you guys want to come to me and ask me anything. I like to think I'm approachable.
Yeah, and she'll be part of the panel tomorrow at lunch, so please come back for that because it'll be a really great panel with her on there as well. So thank you very much, Courtney.
Thank you.